This financial reset is the biggest change in the monetary environment for 80 years or so. So it really is enormously profound, but it offers an unprecedented level of control to what I often refer to as a metastate, and that is a state beyond national border level, one that spans across the whole sort of networks and controls the pipelines and crucial choke points, and most crucially, perhaps the toll booths, to ensure that they're always extracting a little bit of rent on any sort of trade or monetary flows that are taking place.
Traveling to a restrictive country with internet censorship? A VPN is the answer, and surf the internet with no restrictions.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history. And let's make war history. Hey Miles, thank you so much for making yourself available. You are a financial journalist, analyst, commentator, expert, genius.
I think that might be going a little too far. I'm someone who's paying attention with a background in economics, and I would say that sort of sums me up really.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for agreeing to come on my channel, and hopefully this video will go on both your channels, and I'll have the links to your X and your Substack and your YouTube channel. And I think, are you an Odyssey as well?
I think so. I need to check that. I think there is mirroring of the content going across.
Well, I would invite people to go onto Odyssey, given the increasing and encroaching censorship in the UK, and get a VPN while it's still legal. For those of you in the UK. Indeed. Okay. Well, you've done a lot of work on this financial reset that's taking place right now. Does this have anything to do with the Great Reset, or is it something different, or is it part?
Oh, well, it's certainly a very, very, very large component of that, because the financial reset brings in all of the technology elements, the artificial intelligence, the kind of ESG scoring that's being applied. And while there has been some sort of slowdown in the progress they were trying to make with that, that's ultimately down to the fact that they're transitioning towards ensuring the profitability of business models. So they don't want to go too hard and fast on the ESG yet, but that's certainly coming. We certainly hear enough about climate and all of those issues. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, what is this actually? I'm going to ask you, what is this financial reset? But before I say that, you and I are both in the UK. I'm a child protection social worker. I didn't do economics or anything like that, but I've learned, once I learned about gold and silver and then Bitcoin and then how fiat currency works and what money is and all of that, right? So I've educated myself that way. And it seems to me that the policies that this particular government are putting in place, Keir Starmer's government, are designed to impoverish the citizenry. There's nothing that they're doing that's going to make us richer. It seems to me like they're going to drive us to owning nothing, thinking that will make them happy. They're going to make us happy.
Yeah, it's certainly difficult to reach any other alternative conclusion, really. I think looking back on last year, the biggest economic news that I considered actually seeing was that there was a community bank set up under the stewardship initially of Professor Richard Werner. And that was down in Hampshire, and the whole concept of that bank was really to support economic growth, and it would do that by ensuring that the credit that it actually created would be used for productive purposes. So, i.e., that money would not be flowing into asset markets and inflating asset bubbles. So the money would be used to support local businesses and actually provide a means by which local people could invest in their local community to support businesses that actually needed capital. Now, what's so interesting about that is that if money is allocated in that way to generate increased productivity, then of course what thereby happens is the fact that your profitability can be improved. It can mean that variable costs of production. Your average total costs are much, much lower because you've invested in that new piece of machinery. So that in itself is very, very powerful. And to have one bank actually doing that was, enormously important. But sadly, that business was over-regulated into being unviable any longer. And really, if there was really a desire to support economic growth in this country and grow our way out of the problems that the country obviously faces, which are largely self-inflicted in my eyes, then they would be looking to support and champion small independent community banks like that. But the fact that they were willing to actually kind of really push that one out of business just sums up, I think, where the UK is intended to go. And that is to a really stagflationary environment, but as you say, one of wealth extraction and just really taking everything from its citizenry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what you're saying about the overregulation, that's one of the weapons that I think the government are using to destroy food self-sufficiency, destroy farming, because farmers have spent so much time filling in forms and making sure they're meeting some green criteria and
So
their land, right? That they spend less time farming. Never mind all the other ways that they're attacking it through the inheritance tax and stuff. And then even the overregulation of back garden chicken keepers.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're bringing in something that people who are self-employed, I think as of next year, have to do quarterly tax returns. and
It is mad. It is just mad.
Well, it's actually not. Actually not mad. And why I say, I imagine, Miles, you're familiar with fractals.
Yeah, go on.
For people who don't know, a fractal is a self-repeating pattern. So under one atmosphere of pressure, if you take a liter of water, you have to get it to 100 degrees C for the water to turn to steam. Now, if you take 100 liters of water, one atmosphere of pressure, you still have to get the water to 100 degrees for it to turn to steam. And if you take 1,000,000 liters of water at one atmosphere of pressure, 100 degrees, enough energy to raise it to 100 degrees, it will turn to steam. So what you have is a pattern that self-repeats at different scales, like the Norwegian coast. It's always crinkly, whether you're looking at a centimeter or you're looking at it from outer space, it's always crinkly. So self-repeating patterns at different scales. So then what I see is how abusers operate within households. I'm doing this for your own good, getting those that they abuse to engage in meaningless tasks as a way of exerting control, but also as a way of preventing self-sufficiency or productivity. Or even during the lockdown, I'll tell you what to wear, I'll tell you when you can go out, who you can meet with, how long you can go out for. Don't worry about having your own income. I'll give you some pin money, and it's all for your own good. Well, that's what perpetrators of domestic abuse say. Well, that's also what the government says. It's the same conversation at different scales. So it seems absurd if we really do believe they're doing it for our own good. No, they've got some nefarious agenda that has nothing to do with our self-interest whatsoever.
Completely, yeah. And of course, the latest attack this last weekend seems to be on allotments. So looking to actually build properties and put them on allotments. And these properties that they're likely building or intending to build on such plots are likely to be for large corporations to actually buy before they're even built. There's the capturing of the whole sort of asset base that is also taking place. And of course, that's a theme we've heard a lot about since 2020.
Yeah, the rental economy. It's stripping the British population of all their assets and their freedoms and their liberties, just as the imperialists did with people in Australia and India and South Africa and other parts of the world, the Belgians and the Congo. Oh, cheery times, eh? And
yes, indeed.
With the financial reset as part of that whole apparatus. So what is this financial reset?
Well, this financial reset is the biggest change in the monetary environment for 80 years or so. So it really is enormously profound, but it offers an unprecedented level of control to what I often refer to as a metastate, and that is a state beyond national border level, one that spans across the whole sort of networks and controls the pipelines and crucial choke points, and most crucially, perhaps the toll booths, to ensure that they're always extracting a little bit of rent on any sort of trade or monetary flows that are taking place.
What do you mean by toll booths?
So when you own the pipeline or a port, as an example, on, for instance, the BRI project with China, then it means that you can always take a toll from whatever is actually running through that network.
Right.
And obviously, we've now got enormous digital infrastructure, which serves as a crucial pipeline, but also offers enormous power in terms of the choke points that then offers, because it means that flows need to go through certain ports, for want of a better word, to ensure that the trade can actually take place, the movement of goods or money and so on can actually flow freely.
Right. Okay. So and I thought it was something like that, where the rentiers operate, or, the middlemen taking a bit cut, or perhaps more accurately, the pirates carrying out robberies or highway
Yes.
robberies along the way. We'll take a bit.
That's right. And of course, they're saying it's going to be faster and more efficient because they are stripping out intermediaries via this process. If you consider the sort of messaging glue that's going to take place on the financial front, the ISO 20022, for instance, then that allows these processes to take place very, very efficiently, and it's a needed upgrade. That, however, it does mean that by removing intermediaries, you're also centralizing the process among those that actually maintain the control.
Right.
And
Now, what is ISO 2022? I know XRP and Stellar Lumens are ISO 2022 compliant, and there may be others, but what is that standard?
so it's an international standard for electronic data interchange, and that allows financial institutions, whether they're public or private, to actually engage in that financial messaging. As I said, it's very necessary in terms of increasing speed and flexibility, really, to the current system that we have. For anyone who's ever had to move money across borders, it's problematic, it's very expensive, and so on. But what is so different about ISO 20022 is really its capabilities that are unprecedented in terms of the automation that it then enables in terms of categorizing information about what a particular transaction is being utilized for, who the payment originator is, who's the recipient, what invoice number is attached to that, what the purpose of that transaction actually is. That will all be included in the ISO details, or in terms of the actual overall data. And so that's all categorized. And you can almost think of it as a sort of spreadsheet format. So that speeds up the whole sort of analysis of monetary flows, and it also ensures metadata. So rich metadata, they often refer to it as, which ensures that there's always compliance elements built into the system, whether it's KYC or whether it's AML. So the anti-money laundering, your customer information is built into that system. So that's obviously profound. And then you've got the cross-border interoperability element that's actually included. But in itself, ISO 20022 is a neutral standard. It's really about what is built into working on that pipeline. And that's where you have the development of Cbdcs and stablecoins post-Genius to ensure that metadata is always actually passing through that pipeline network.
Right, those wonderful CBDCs that are going to have us owning nothing and being happy. It's for our own good. Is it for our own good, Miles?
Oh, very much. Yes.
Okay, so please carry on with the explanation of the financial reset.
Right. So what I find so interesting about that concept is of course that what is actually being built there, and this really started around the 2000s, and then gathered speed from 2004 or so, is that it ensures convergence in financial infrastructure. And so that doesn't matter whether you're going to be sending payments from Africa, whether you're going to be making payments from a Chinese state-owned enterprise or whatever. You've got that convergence in what is apparently a divergent world, where we've got these sort of divergent kind of narratives taking place in terms of conflict and political and governance approaches, really. So yeah, I find that very, very interesting. And then, of course, when you actually consider who could possibly be a key coordinator of this overall approach, you've got the fact that central bank representatives are sitting down together at Basel under the Committee on the Global Financial System, the CGFS board at the BIS. So ISO, therefore, is really the neutral bridge in what is a fracturing world, it seems. Yeah.
So, put another way, and I don't know how political your content is, but the content of my channels, there's a lot of political analysis. I did start off as a purely cryptocurrency, but then with lockdown and a little bit with Brexit, life got a bit more interesting. What we have is the banksters, again, running the show in the shadows. Would that be fairly accurate?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because when you actually think about the adoption of this, then of course the central banks are sort of playing a major strategic role. But then you've got the so-called GSIBs, who are the systemically important banks of the world. And they are essentially ensuring that the transmission is really taking place within each country, because each country, each of the major countries, of course, has a number of these globally systemically important banks within it. And if they're towing the line, then they're forcing other smaller banks to comply. And we mentioned regulatory issues earlier. And that is an area where smaller banks are struggling to actually keep pace with what is actually being required there. So I think what we're also going to see as a result of this entire process is really a greater concentration of the banking sector, and that's not good for anyone, because of course it's another centralization of power, and really the world needs to be decentralizing rather than centralizing. So that's quite significant. But you do have various fintech providers, and one thing I haven't really dived into on my channel there, because I've been quite critical of the stablecoins, is that there is the potential there that could actually be supportive to growth in terms of innovation beyond a central bank digital currency, because it does allow some degree of decentralization, because you are outsourcing the stablecoin provision to private firms.
Okay.
And that's obviously opposed to a central bank, where it's effectively like having a bank account with the central bank.
Now, just so I understand you correctly, that I'm clear about the risks of central bank digital currencies. And if people who don't know yet from watching my channel, and I'm sure they know on your channel, Miles, is central bank digital currency is a currency that's issued by the government, goes straight into your wallet, which is matched with a biometric digital ID, so they know it's you, not anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
They can determine, they can control what you spend it on, see all your expenditures, prevent you from buying steak, because that's, if you eat too much steak, it's going to destroy the planet. And they can also do things like reduce your bank balance by a little bit every day, so that you can't save, you just have to keep money moving through the market. They can take fines and taxes at source without going through any other procedures or anything. It's really, really efficient for our overlords. Of course, it's really shitty for us, right? So I'm clear about that. So then what's the danger with these stable coins? And then just one thing about the stable coins that I think is the danger with them is their universality, that, USDT, as the largest stable coin of all, can be sent anywhere real fast, and it's transparent. But what else is dangerous about stable coins?
Well, stablecoins themselves obviously have the same sort of surveillance capabilities as the CBDCs themselves. So that's certainly something that bothers most people. So while they said, okay, we're not going to have a central bank digital currency, and there was a fair degree of celebration regarding that. There's actually a sleight of hand which is actually taking place, and that is that, of course, you're now going to have these stablecoin providers being able to actually mint their own currency. I think one other area which is seldom explored, which I've covered in more substantial detail, I'd say, is the fact that you are offering what's known as seigniorage revenue to the currency creators. So what does that mean? That means when they actually take a dollar deposit, then it means that they have to back that dollar up 1-to-1 with US Treasuries. And then they mint the stablecoin. So what that means is that the private stablecoin provider issues a brand new stablecoin, but it also holds a US Treasury now, or a 1-for-1 US Treasury position. Now, what that then enables is these large corporations. So it's like JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, PayPal, USDC we mentioned. It means that these corporations then earn yield on the US Treasury. Now, that has the potential to be enormously profitable. Initially, there's a fair degree of startup costs and fixed costs in terms of the actual maintenance of such a system, but it's largely a programmable algorithmic system that you're building, and so once it's built, then it has the capacity to generate significant income because you're not facing those same sort of rising variable costs of production. So the more stablecoins you issue, the more profitable such a system could well be.
Oh wow, that matches or mirrors, the big pitfall of fiat currencies, that it gives the banksters this advantage. What's it called? When you're near the spigot.
Oh yes, being near the monetary spigots and
Yeah.
Cantillon effect, yes.
Sorry, the Cantillon effect. There you go, Miles. Me
Yeah.
as a social worker, I know about the Cantillon effect, which is whoever's nearest the spigot, and that applies for Bitcoin miners and gold and silver miners. They have the most advantage, but with fiat currency, it's exaggerated infinite times because you can just print like this with no effort and just profit. So currently they print fiat currencies and then lend it out, and then we work really, really hard to pay the interest on those currencies. This is the same system that they'll profit by. The more they inflate, the more they profit.
Yes, that's right. And so what's happening is that you're taking that public debt and you're turning it into a private revenue stream. Because, as you say, the more debt increases, which, as we know, it's on an exponential trend, it just means that they're going to generate more and more stable coins. And what's perhaps more powerful there is that they are incentivized in this system to offer more and more stable coins for the reasons that I just gave. And if you're largely looking at fixed costs rather than a rising cost level, and in terms of the actual production and minting of these coins, then it means that you are enormously incentivized to offer more and more of them and to ensure that it really takes off. And that's something else that I've considered on my channel there. So yeah, that's enormously powerful. Now, there is one other dynamic here as well, and that relates to what's commonly known as the Triffin dilemma. And the Triffin dilemma was kind of coined in the 1960s, but really it's actually a tool of financial colonialism where you're forcing other countries to actually use your currency. Now, as you force other countries to use your currency, that relies upon you to actually export sufficient amounts overseas so that people can use the US dollar overseas as an international reserve currency. Because, say, a Chinese firm invoicing a Brazilian firm is going to invoice in dollars. And so that Brazilian firm now needs to get a hold of dollars. And so the only way they can do that really is by the US actually exporting dollars. But a fundamental change is taking place here, because that was always taking place through a trade deficit, or current account deficit more widely. And so by running a trade deficit, it meant that America was bringing in goods but sending currency overseas, so that there was sufficient dollars overseas. But there's in reality always a shortage. Now, that is a very, very powerful dynamic, because what is now happening, or what I expect to now happen, is the potential for people overseas to be able to open up a digital wallet and hold US stablecoins. So that means that if you're in an inflation-ridden country where you're facing 20-25% inflation, you're again incentivized to hold a US dollar, but it isn't a real US dollar, of course. It's a synthetic US dollar backed by a US Treasury bill. So that's a very interesting dynamic. Now, originally, with the Triffin dilemma, this all sounds very complicated, but I've got a cyclical diagram which just smooths this all over. So that's worth having a look at. But initially, as I said, it was about running a trade deficit, and of course we've seen enormous deindustrialization of the US economy as a result of this dynamic, which was built in and baked into the cake. But now that shift, that need to actually run a deficit, is now based upon the government and its expenditure. Because if there's increased demand for treasuries overseas, there's effectively an increased demand for the US debt to run even higher.
Right.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, it is making sense, because what I'm thinking is that this is going to lead to inflation and the same problems that have brought us to where we are today, where the currency loses value because it just gets inflated away.
Yes.
So the
Yes,
good news
that's
is
right.
the good news is the whole CBDC thing could collapse because the value of the currency collapses, gets inflated away. It's the same cycle.
Yes, it is, and it gets even worse, I believe, because
Well, in this instance, worse is better. Collapse is good.
the reason I say that is because if the debt continues to grow enormously, and there is the incentive to run higher and higher deficits, in the same way that there has been the incentive for the US to run trade deficits for all these years and decimate its manufacturing sector, then what that means is that you are encouraging people across the world, and in America, of course, to hold these stable coins, which are backed by US Treasury bills as the key asset on one hand. But as that debt grows and grows and grows, that becomes a risk vector as well. So the more stable coins take off, if that does contribute to higher and higher debts, then or higher and higher deficits rather, and thereby increase the debt even faster, then you are creating an enormous risk element, which is not borne upon banks themselves. It is now borne upon individuals who hold those digital wallets and those stable coins. And then all you need to happen is of course treasuries to collapse. A sudden collapse in demand for US T-bills because people are concerned about the level of debt, or something spooks the market. Then the consequences would just be enormous, absolutely enormous. Something I refer to as stablecoin supernova.
Yeah, it would be on a global scale.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
right.
it would be unprecedented. It really would.
And then the other risk of stablecoins that you mentioned earlier is that they're transparent and programmable. Because USDT runs on, it's an ERC20 token, but it runs on other Ethereum-like other forms of smart programmable money. Trying to keep this not getting too crypto technical. That it can be programmed and in the same way that a CBDC can be programmed and restricted. So, but then could they burn them?
Well, one other element that I think is very interesting here as well is that I referred to a metastate earlier, and I believe that if you're a metastate and you are holding assets at a global level, you would be overweight dollars right now, and so you want someone else to hold the bag here, and so therefore you want to start sort of offloading your longer dated US debt. And one way to do that is, of course, to encourage the wider public to hold US T bills.
Right. Another way of being shafted.
Yes. So, for instance, of course, what we're seeing within the global economy in terms of the shift that's taken place with gold and so on is that there is an undeniable transition taking place there. And I think they're going to want to continue to do this very, very gradually. And we often see all sorts of videos saying, oh, the next crash about to happen and all the rest of it. But if I was them, I'd just be looking to slowly, gradually offload my dollar assets into other areas without causing enormous downward pressure on the price. Because you don't want to sell at once, because that would obviously collapse the market. So therefore, you want to actually approach the mechanism slowly, gradually, and you then want to transition into another asset, whether that's Bitcoin, whether that's gold, those other cryptocurrencies. It means we can see why there is that almost transition taking place. And now, of course, I think there was an announcement in the FT last week I saw, which was referring to the fact that the US was now going to issue more UST bills, which are the short-term 3-month bills, so short-term US debt, and that is because of them looking to remanage the maturity of debt and focus on the stablecoin issue, because stablecoins are not backed by the longer-term debt.
Right. Okay, now I have to warn you. I don't understand bonds, and I don't want you to explain it to me. I've looked up on it. I've had, Tom Luongo explain it to me, right? I can understand just about everything else that happens in the financial world, but long-term debt, short-term debt, and yields, and okay. So we're not going to go there because I think I would the room would start spinning, and I'd become way more incoherent than I am already, right? But I do get that it's bad news. I get that from you. It is bad news. I'm willing to accept that. Then isn't the risk that this whole system becomes so unwieldy and overbearing, and it's unnatural, that it collapses under the weight of its own contradictions eventually?
Yes.
It's going to provoke resistance. Nations aren't going to be happy with this. There'll be certain nations that aren't going to be happy with this. There's going to be groups of people that aren't going to be happy with this. And as people get wise to it, how much more and more it costs them, because eventually, so far, there's like a cycle, because I know you talk about this in your videos, the cycles, that people overturn their imperialist overlords. And then they try some other mechanism, those imperialist overlords, and then that prevails for a while, and then it gets overturned. Like Martin Armstrong says, human nature don't change. They don't change. We're still the same human beings.
Yes, very true.
Now,
yeah, I think that's undoubtedly true. And I think that's almost the intention, really, that we're heading to an enormous crash with global repercussions. But I think if I'm right on that, then that's going to be a long way ahead. That's sort of 10, 15 years time. So that's the good news.
Yeah, well, for other reasons, from looking elsewhere, I actually think it's going to be sooner. And one of the things Martin Armstrong talks about, and I don't know if I assume you're familiar with his work.
Yes.
Yeah, is 2032 or something. It's all going to flip over, and it ties in with other schools of knowledge that I've looked at as well. Fingers crossed. And then there is the growing decentralization. So, the government in the UK, they put in the online, for people who don't know, Online Speech Act. It's a criminal offense to stand or sit quietly holding a sign, not saying anything, that says that you oppose mass murder of innocents and you support a group that opposes the mass murder of innocents. Just holding that sign, doesn't matter if you're 90 years old, you are branded as a terrorist. And then there's the Online Speech Act, where all kinds of insane censorship, and the government of talking about banning VPNs, only talking about it right now. But then there are decentralized VPNs like Sentinel.co, which people can download. Some of them run for free of charge on Android and iPhone, completely decentralized, like ants' nests are decentralized. That will give people, and I know that Sentinel DVPNs operate in nations where VPNs are illegal or have to be regulated, like in Pakistan or Russia or Saudi Arabia, because you can download the APK file and nobody knows, and there you go. You're off, right? So there's the whole movement for decentralization, including, and I don't know if you're familiar with any of these, you are familiar with cryptocurrencies, decentralized privacy-focused cryptocurrencies like Monero, like Pirate Chain, but also private stablecoins like Silk, which I don't know much about, and that runs as part of the Shade network, which is part of the Cosmos ecosystem. And also, Zano has the Freedom Dollar, and I'm hoping to do an interview with Zano about the Freedom Dollar. But one of the things that Zano allows people to do is you can send Bitcoin to a decentralized bridge, and then your Bitcoin lands in your Zano wallet, and it's invisible. Zano uses the same technology as Monero, but is able to hold assets on its blockchain. So I think those sorts of solutions are going to grow and grow as people resist the increasing authoritarianism and tyranny.
Yes, I certainly hope that you're right on that, Rich. Yeah, I certainly do.
Dear God, yes.
And it's certainly something I need to cover on my channel there as well.
Yes. Okay. All right. But now, apart from that, what can ordinary people do? What do you advise?
Well, I think as we've been alluding to there, really, that we're heading into this new era of what I refer to as monetary pluralism, really, and that is the fact that we're going to have all these different systems which largely operate under the same pipeline network that we've discussed with ISO. And then there's the potential, of course, for commodity-backed currencies as well. Now, whether that will happen or not, don't know. There's more rumours regarding Africa on that front. But of course, the pipeline does remain the same, whether they're using a commodity-backed system or not. So I think really the best approach, I believe, is almost in line with Keynes's liquidity preference theorem.
Yes.
I'm no fan of Keynes, but I believe that there's sense in that, because it really identifies three areas. That firstly, you need to have money for, or liquidity for, a transaction or transactionary purpose. Second, that you need to have money for a precautionary element. So something as a store of wealth, I think, works there. And of course, typical stores of wealth, gold, you could possibly extend that to silver, or some may disagree there. And some may see that as a speculative element, which is the third aspect. Likewise, you might see others who believe Bitcoin is that store of value and want to hold Bitcoin. So that could be their store of value. But then I think it's really a matter of determining how much you want to allocate to a speculative basket there, because we know that our currency is being weaponized against us. And that's true of wherever you are, whether you're in the EU, whether you're in UK, US. It's universally true, sadly. So if our currency is being weaponized against us, you don't really want to hold much of that currency. So therefore, you've got to think, right, how much am I going to allocate to whatever is my chosen store of value? How much am I actually going to look at as a speculative bet here? And allocate your percentages accordingly. And of course, within the store of value precautionary element, then you've also got other assets as well. So be it land, could even extend to things like tools and just the sort of first principles for humankind almost.
Yep. And so that would mean like people allocating some of their money, some of their currency to gold, silver, and Bitcoin, whatever they decide. Because I think those three are money, definitely money. They can't be inflated away. They can't be controlled. And by the way, None of this is financial advice. Do your own due diligence and don't invest any more than you can afford to lose in anything I say in this video or any other video that I ever appear in. So it's an important thing to say. Um, and one of the things about gold has never gone to zero and universally recognized. And one of the things I notice in Britain is that people generally don't get the value of gold. They just they do in Pakistan. No kidding, they get it in Pakistan and most parts of the world. And people are slow to get the value of Bitcoin as well. Because one of the criticisms I hear is like, oh, it's not tangible, like it doesn't have physicality. But you and I are talking over Zoom. Zoom doesn't have physicality, but it has value in the marketplace. YouTube doesn't have physicality, but it has utility and value in the marketplace. So that's my counter to that. Okay. Miles, anything you want to say before we finish up? Anything else to cover?
Yeah, I would just say that this is really just being a carefully managed process, and it's really been decades and decades in the making. This, and I think we all just need to be paying attention, and that is true of whether it's the latest executive order, that is true of any sort of global institution, whether it's the World Economic Forum, the IMF, and so on. So, yeah, the more people that are actually paying attention to what's actually taking place, I think the better. I'd just also add in there as well that I think there is a stealth approach taking place towards the confiscation of gold and the seizure of private property, and one way that's taking place, I believe, is through tokenization, which is largely in its infancy at the moment. But if a crisis does come sooner rather than later, then of course that accelerates all of these processes that we've been talking about, really.
Yeah, and I would just reword that slightly. If a crisis is created sooner rather than later, that will accelerate the process. That would be my take on it. And I think what you said is really, really important. And I'll add a few caveats to that, which is one, we have to question and we have to awaken ourselves and others and not be taken in by what's on the surface. And I know there have been times when I've been taken in. And I'm sure there's times that I've been taken in now that I'm not awake to, but it means digging in, considering other ideas that may be superficially abhorrent or weird or whatever, right? Or nonsensical, but actually be willing to look at them. And the other thing is that we have to unite.
Absolutely.
We have to unite. You know, that there was, I think there was a justified and merited outcry with what happened in Southport last year. And people rightfully appalled by the government response and the police response. I think there's a justified and merited outrage at what happened over the weekend with the police taking action against people from a different political spectrum, but it's the same forces of control that are targeting us.
Absolutely, yeah, and this is why I have little time for tribalism, really. You know, and all of this sort of Bitcoin versus gold, like, you know, it's about personal preference. You know,
Yeah.
you can justify either. I don't believe there's a perfect monetary system there for us, so therefore you've just got to make a decision one way or the other. But it's really not worth falling out. We know who the common enemy is, and that's what we need to be awake to.
Yeah, and the tribalism is also in terms of left and right. I don't think that applies.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's about sovereignty and autonomy and freedom now for all. Okay. And just one other thing I would say, Miles, and then we'll finish up. What you said about this is decades and decades and decades in planning. It's not something that I understood that I think people generally understand, because at the level where we are at is the pros. We don't necessarily think in those sorts of time spans, but the elite families do, because their riches, their wealth, their history, they're very conscious of it, spans generations, and they play the long game. So we got to start playing the long game too. Miles, thank you so much. I'm going to have the links in the description below so people can go and check out your work, and look forward to speaking to you again at some point soon. And I would just remind people, go get a VPN. It's Crypto Rich and Miles Harris signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.